everybody, and welcome back to another EESW Scratch coding tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to build a game called Octopus Jump. The objective of this game is to control the octopus, eat the fish, and not let the diver catch you. We've got three sprites on screen, three characters, both moving along the x-axis left and right, and the y-axis up and down. We've got two variables, score and lives, and another variable controlling the speed, because you notice that as our octopus catches the fish, the diver starts to move a little bit faster to make the game more difficult. So, let's get started. We're going to go to Create and start a new project. And here's our blank workspace. First thing we're going to do is set up our sprites, so we don't need Scratch the cat. We want an octopus. We'll take this guy here. You'll see that he has many different costumes, different ways for it to look. We're going to choose our diver, and we're going to take a fish. Let's start this time by setting up the look of our game. So first we're going to change the sizes of our characters, our sprites. Take the octopus, make him half the size. We'll change the size from 100 to 50. We'll make the fish, let's see, maybe a little bit less than half, let's make that 40. And our diver, not too much smaller, let's make him 70%. Alright, now let's have a look at our backdrops. You can choose an underwater backdrop. I like this one here. And let's, while we're at it, set up our game over backdrop. Oops. So we'll have to draw that one ourselves. So we'll paint this backdrop. We'll make a solid color for the background. Let's make it black this time around, and then we'll add some text. Let's make the text green. This game over. Change the text font and make it nice and big. Pop it in the center. Let's call this game over. Okay. Now let's start having a look at our code. So we're going to code our octopus here. And before we write code for our octopus to move, we're going to set up our variables. So I'm going to take our when the game starts block here, and I'm going to go to variables. We're going to need three variables this time. Like before, we're going to need a variable for score. We're going to need a variable for lives. And because our diver doesn't move at the same speed all the time, we want the speed to change as the score increases. We're going to set up a new variable called speed, like this. And let's pop these all in here. At the very beginning of the game, we want to set our lives to 3. We want to set our score to 0. And we want to set speed to, let's start with 3. At the very beginning of the game, we also want to tell our game to switch to our underwater backdrop so that it doesn't display the game over backdrop when the game starts. So we'll have deluxe and we'll say switch backdrop to underwater 1. Now that we have the way our game looks set up and our variables all set up, we can get on with coding our octopus to move. So we're going to go to Control and use an if block to say if the left key is pressed, we'll take this key pressed and we'll choose left arrow, and then we'll go to motion and change X by 10. If we change the X by 10, we know that our octopus is going to move to the right, because our X values increase when we move to the right and decrease when we move to the left. So we want to set this to -10. We also want to duplicate that block and say if the right arrow is pressed, change X by 10. Now if you remember from our previous games, when we start this game, the left and the right key won't move the octopus because it's waiting to see if the key is pressed only when we click the green flag. So if I hold it down and click the green flag, we can see our octopus move. Let's go to Control and pop a forever loop around these. Now our octopus moves left and right whenever we press those keys. Now we want a way for our octopus to move along the y-axis. We're going to do that a little bit differently. We're going to have the octopus falling down or floating down all the time and pushing back up when we press the space key. So let's look at the falling down part of that first. Back to motion, and inside our forever loop we're going to set it to change Y, and remember up is a positive number and down is a negative number, so let's put a minus in front of that. That seems a little bit quick, so let's change it to -5, and our octopus should be floating down. Good. Alright. Now we want the octopus to push up whenever we press the space key to swim upwards. So we're going to go to Events and we're going to take another when the game starts, when the green flag is clicked block. We're going to say if sensing key space is pressed, motion change Y by 10. That's going to move the octopus upwards. We mustn't forget to put that inside a forever loop so that it happens whenever we press the space key. Let's have a look now. So octopus moves up when I hold down the space key, he moves left and he moves right. Okay. This octopus here doesn't really look too much like he's swimming. That's because he's staying in the same costume, the same look. So we're going to change his costume whenever he's moving up to push his arms, his tentacles down. So let's have a look at that now. We'll go from the octopus over to costumes and we'll have a look. We've got 5 different costumes, but like the bat in the previous game, we don't have a costume that we can switch to that looks quite right. So we're going to make our own. We'll duplicate Octopus A and we end up with Octopus A2. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to change the shape of this sprite. We're going to change the way he's holding his arms. We can select them there, and you notice that all 8 of his tentacles are highlighted. We don't want to highlight all of them, we want to select one at a time. So let's ungroup them. Now we should be able to move his tentacles one by one like this. We'll just pull them in a little bit, like that. And rotate these ones a little bit more downwards. And this one will take down as well. Oops. Make sure we're selecting the right one. Okay, what does that look like? Not quite what we'd like. Let's move these in. move that one forward to cover up the little spot of darker tentacle we have there. How does that look? It kind of looks like he's crossing his arms. Let's move these back out a little bit. Alright, I'm happy with that. Back to our code, and we'll say when the space key is pressed, switch costume to octopus A2. And because we've switched costume, we need to tell it to switch the costume back. So let's put this here. Switch to octopus A. Alright. Now that looks much better. Next, let's have a look at the code for our fish that we're going to be chasing. So we're going to go over here, and when the green flag is clicked, when the game starts, we're going to use our forever loop because our fish is going to move all the time. And back to motion, I'm going to take this spot that says move 10 steps. The reason we're using this one instead of our change X or change Y is that we want our fish to move in the direction it's facing. So move 10 steps will move him 10 steps in this direction if he's facing this direction, and if our fish is facing any other direction, it'll move them 10 steps in that direction. So we'll put that there, and let's start our fish each time we start in a random position. So if we have a look at what this does to our game, our fish moves in the direction it's facing, starting from a random position each time. Moving quite quickly, so let's slow that down by half and set it to 5 steps. Much better. Okay. Next, we want our fish to change directions. We don't always want him moving to the right hand side of the screen. So let's take this turn block and pop that there. Now you'll see that the fish is turning in the same direction each time. We're going to change that using a random operator. Now, the direction our fish faces can go from 0 all the way to 180, and then from minus 180 all the way back to 0. We don't want our fish to start facing that way and then flip around to face the opposite direction. So we're going to set a pick random turn from, let's say, minus 20 degrees to 20 degrees, and that will let our fish turn left and right just a little bit each time it moves forward 5 steps. Let's have a look at what this does. So our fish is swimming, but he tends to get stuck in the corners like this. So in order to fix that, let's use a block that we used in our first game, which was if on edge bounce. Okay, this doesn't look too bad. Each time the fish touches the edge, it changes direction. Perfect. Now that we have our fish moving, we want our octopus to be able to catch the fish. And right now, when our octopus moves near the fish, nothing happens. So let's go to our code here and we'll say if touching the octopus. So control, put our if loop in here, and our sensing, take this one that says touching mouse pointer and we'll change that to touching octopus. We want our score to increase first, so let's have a look at our score in variables. We'll change score by 1. Let's have a look at what happens now. So see the score increasing here, but it increases a lot whenever our fish touches the octopus. We want it only to increase by 1. So what we're going to do is, as soon as the octopus touches the fish, we're going to hide the fish so it doesn't stay touching. So over here to looks, and we can take this block that says hide. Let's have a look at what happens now. So our score increased by 1 and the fish disappeared. We need our fish to reappear now. So let's take a show block. We won't put that in just yet. We'll put a wait 1 second and then show. But we don't want it to show up in the same spot. That'll make the game a little too easy. So we're going to use our go to random position block one more time there. Let's have a look at what happens now. Doesn't look like our fish is appearing at all. Let's see what we can do. Let's try and put a show at the very top. There it is. Fish disappears for 1 second. Score increases. And it reappears somewhere random. And lastly, we can have our characters say things when they're hit with a little speech bubble. Let's go to looks and pull out this say hello block. Let's put that in just underneath when we play the sound. And let's change it because we don't want our fish saying hello. Okay, let's have a look at what happens now. Not quite what we want. I don't think it's showing what we wanted to say because our fish is already hidden. Let's put this above our hide block. Now, it does say chomp, but it stays on the screen for a longer time. And that is because we've set it to say chomp for 2 seconds. Let's change that to 0.3. Okay, I'm much happier with that now. Next, let's go have a look at the code for our diver. So we'll click over here and we want our diver to move in a very similar way to our fish. So we're going to get started on that right away, but if you'd like to challenge yourself a little bit, why don't you try pause the video right now and see how you get on coding the diver yourself. Alright, we'll get back to it. So we'll start off exactly the same. We'll use our when the game starts block. We'll use our forever loop. And we'll use our motion block. We'll say move a little bit slower. 3 steps. Now we'll tell it to turn and we'll use our pick random block again. -20 +20. Oh, and there our diver's moving already. Looks a little bit jerky. Let's try and change that to -10 +10. And like before, stuck going through the edge, so we'll need to put our if on edge length block here. Okay, this looks a little bit better. Like that. Okay. Now we want our diver to move a little bit faster each time our score goes up, each time our octopus catches a fish. So rather than tell it to move 3 steps, if you remember we set up our speed variable, and this variable is going to change. So we can go into variables and say move speed steps, which at the moment is 3. We need to figure out how to get the game to increase this each time our octopus catches a fish. So let's go back to our fish code, and each time it's touching the octopus, let's broadcast a message. So we'll find that in events, this one here. So let's change the name of the message. Let's call it go faster, and put that in each time the score increases. Now let's go back to our diver, and we have another block that says when I receive go faster. We're going to use that along with our change variable, and we'll just say change speed by 1. Let's have a look at what happens now. So when our octopus catches a fish, our speed variable, you can see up here in the corner, increases. You can see already that our diver is going much faster. When we restart the game, our speed variable drops down to 3 again. If it doesn't drop down for you, you might need to check that you've put a set speed at the very beginning of the game. We put it here on our octopus. Now the next thing we want to do is write some code to say that when the diver catches the octopus, to reduce our lives by 3 and have the octopus disappear and reappear again in a random position. So rather than put that code on the diver, we're going to put it on the octopus. Just like we did with when the octopus catches the fish, we're going to use an if block. Let's put it down underneath here. We'll say if touching diver, and we'll look at variables and we'll say change lives by -1. Now we don't want the same problem with the fish, where when the octopus touches the fish, the score keeps going up. We don't want our lives to go down by more than 1. So we're going to need to hide the octopus, wait for a second, and then reappear. So let's go to looks, and we'll pop a hide block as soon as the diver touches the octopus. We'll tell it to control wait for 1 second, and then back to motion. We'll tell it to go to a random position and show. Let's see what happens. An octopus disappears and our lives decrease. Okay. Now, while we're on the subject of sounds, if you have a look here to choose a sound, Scratch has a whole bunch of loops that you can use. Now, a loop is a small sample of music that you can play over and over again. Things like code. So if you wanted to add background music to your game, you might want to choose a sound like this, and you can tell it to loop this sound by putting it in a forever loop, like this. Now I'm going to leave that off at the moment, because if it was on, I'd need to talk louder through the rest of this video. And let's look at putting the finishing touches to our game. When our lives drop to 0, we need to tell it to end the game. So right here at the bottom of our octopus code, let's say control if and we'll go to operators and we'll use our less than operator, and we'll say if lives are less than 1. So in variables we'll find our lives and we can plug that in there. Back to control, just like we did in our last game. Stop all, and we want to switch the backdrop to game over. Let's add a sound where we'll add it. So we'll go back to sounds, choose a sound, and I like this one here. Let's pop that in here. So say play sound, lose until done. And let's see what that looks like when we play the game.
Hey!
So when we lose our lives,
Hey! Hey!
to 0, game like that. And then everything stops. So there we have it, folks. You have just finished making your very own Octopus Champ game. Well done. If you'd like to keep going and add more to your game, you could think about adding more fish, have them move in different ways and at different speeds with more points for your octopus when it catches the trickier fish. You could add another diver when the score reaches a certain point. As always, I'd love to see what you guys come up with, so please tweet your creations at EESW Feel free to tweet us with any questions you might have as well, and I will look forward to seeing you for the next tutorial. Take care.